Yo, what's up everyone? It is The Beast and welcome back to The Beast On. What is The Beast On today? That is a good question. We're going to continue where we left off in the last video I did. But again, we're not dealing in a linear situation where you're watching the videos one after the other. You may pick this one up 3 years from now and be like, what's the last video you did? Well, this video comes on the third day of the mass dislocations at iHeartMedia. So I recorded a video on the first day that the firing started happening, and this video is going on the third day as the fallout continues. And there's I've had a good back and forth with some of my former colleagues and other people in the industry about this situation, so I wanted to just continue the dialogue. But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to the channel right there. Go hit subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Hit the little bell. It's right over there. You'll be notified when I have a new video up. You can always follow me on the social, on the Twitter, the Instagram at Miami Radio Beast. And if you really love me, if you really just want to give me a hug, you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/Brian the Beast London. So we're in the third day of iHeartMedia dislocating employees, which is an interesting term to use because when I think of a dislocation, I'm thinking of a knee or an elbow or a shoulder, not a person. But the vernacular we try to use when we're trying to make something horrible seem like it's a good business decision is really interesting. So if just to clue you in, it looks like iHeartMedia is preparing themselves to be sold to Liberty. Liberty owns SiriusXM. And in order to do that, they're basically thinning out the staff as much as possible, going to I'm trying to think of what Bob Pittman's words were. His centers of excellence. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the verbiage is that he used. I forget. I've read so much in the last couple of days. But basically, everything is going hub and spoke, much like it did with my former employee, Entercom, where everything gets done out of a couple markets and gets fed to all the rest of the markets. And this is what I think is horrible for radio. And I'll get into that. But what you're basically seeing is, and the expectations are that between 1,000 and 2,000 people are going to be let go. And iHeart really won't comment on the number of people being let go, but they say, yeah, it's a small percentage of our 12,500 employees, and great, but you're really doing an injustice. And just to take it back, there's always that balance and that back and forth between too much regulation and too much deregulation. And you don't want too much government interference because that hinders growth and the ability to make money. But on the other hand, when you let things go, when you let the inmates run the asylum, bad things happen. And that's what's happened in this case. Back in, I believe it was in the mid-90s, let's say 96, whatever, when they really, when the Clinton administration and that FCC changed the rules as far as ownership goes, that was some bad deregulation that really hurt the business, and that started Clear Channel morphing into the iHeart, morphing into less local and live programming and more just voice tracked and other just feeding it, opening up the pot and letting something go, as we would say in the business, and that sucked. And then we got another ruling a couple years ago, which basically meant that the number one purpose and in the charter and in the purpose, as I said, of a radio station was to serve the community that you were in, right? If you're in Poughkeepsie, you're there to serve the greater Poughkeepsie area. But a law that was passed, or some deregulation that happened a couple of years ago, basically said, listen, You can call yourself a Poughkeepsie station, but you don't have to have a physical building there. You don't have to have any local management or local employees or local DJs there. All you have to do in order to satisfy the rules of of serving that community is either having a local phone number, which we all know using the power of VoIP and every other trick of the trade in the phone industry is not hard to get a phone number where you dial one area code and a phone number and it rings to somewhere in Bangladesh, or an 800 number. So really not much for companies to have to do in order to say we're serving the local community. So basically what this has led to is I can be at office in New York and feed programming to 20,000 stations across America in every different market, and as long as there's a phone number with some area code from that market, I'm doing local radio, even though I'm not. And it's really a disservice to the listener. So I've had back and forth with my former colleagues and employees and people I know in the industry, and it's pretty clear where the line falls, right? If you're in sales, you're not really affected or impacted as far as your ability to do the job, unless you had clients that were attached to a personality that was blown out or what have you, and I get that. But you're always going to need local salespeople, right? You can't. Well, as long as we're still selling radio ads to local businesses and not just going all national, but you still need someone on the ground to go, talk face to face. Hopefully, hopefully it's not getting to the point where we're all just calling people on the phone or using email or text to sell. But as long as you're having to pound the pavement to make sales, well, you need local salespeople. But that's all you need. Because everything else, basically, like, you could have 4 employees in a building that aren't sales and run 7 radio stations. Someone to take in the production, load it in the system, and go. Boom. Or that could probably be done remotely, too, actually. You're going to see less everything. You're going to see less program directors, music directors, assistant program directors. You're going to see more sales managers being in charge of markets rather than market managers because they make far less money. You're just going to see an entire stripping down, leaning down of the entire industry. Now, in the past, when there's been mass layoffs and firings, the good thing about radio is because it's so widely available, and it does have a 92% reach, and we'll get into that in a second because it's a number that's thrown out a lot, but I want to break that down. As long as there's an AM, FM radio in your car, it still has reach, right? Yes. Well, back in the day, you could lose your job, but then there'd be 17 other companies that would have a job willing to hire you. You might have to relocate, but there'd be other jobs. But now we're getting to the point where people are losing their jobs and there's nowhere for them to go. I'm reading all the radio blogs and all the radio news sites, and they're just printing names and email addresses and phone numbers of people. Hey, please reach out to these people if you want to hire them. And I'm not sure how many of them are going to get a call. How many jobs are out there? The job availability in radio is shrinking exponentially every day. And soon you're going to find yourself, like me, where I've got nowhere else to go, as long as I don't want to move. And even then, there's no guarantee, there's no promise that you'd get a job in another market. And unfortunately, if you're in Miami or Boston or New York or Chicago or a major market, and you want to get a radio job, first of all, you're not going to find a job in Dubuque. But let's say there was a radio job in Dubuque. How much money do you think you're going to make in Dubuque compared to Chicago? It's not going to be enough to feed your family. So there's going to be all sorts of economic impacts that we see from this complete dislocation of employees at iHeart that's going to affect everything. Now let's talk about the 92% reach, and radio is the fastest growing medium and all that stuff. And I get that it's numbers, but you can always use numbers for, to support any argument, right? I could pretty much pick any argument out of the sky and find some numbers, find some facts that are going to support it. Well, as long as radio, and I'm talking terrestrial radio, as long as AM, FM is in every car that's made, it's going to have a huge reach, right? We don't put TVs in cars. We don't put how do I put this? You can attach your iPhone, iPod, Android, you can attach your device to your car, but your car doesn't come with that device. It may come with Sirius XM radio, but they still make every car, and every car still has an AM, FM radio. That means everyone that has a car has radio. So you're going to have that high percentage of reach. But the question is, and this is what I think the problem is, and you can use that number all you want, is that you're getting to the point where the programming on that radio that's in that person's car is becoming less and less desirable to listen to. Because we're going from the days where, every FM station that was running music would do music testing and have focus groups and know what that market really wanted to hear and play new music and all that stuff. You're going from those days where you're really programming a radio station to fit the market it was in, to now we're hearing that, if you're a pop station, whether you're in Columbus or Sacramento or somewhere in upstate New York, you're basically just going to play the same music. It's all going to be the same music log. It's going to be national music logs. And your locale, your community, that's not going to matter. And the DJ that's doing the announce of the song, that person is probably not going to be in the city where the music is playing. So, they may voice track this and they may Google, well, hey, what's the news that's going on in Sioux City, and have a couple things, but they're not from that area. They don't know that area. They probably don't know how to pronounce the streets, neighborhoods, names. They're not in that community. And so, yes, radio still has a far reach. And if you're in sales, you still have something to sell, but the product is not as good. Eventually, the listeners, if they haven't already, is going to pick up on this, that, hey, man, I used to listen to this morning show or this afternoon jock on my way home, or the morning show on the way to work, and now it just sounds like it's something out of, generic Radio 101, and that's what it is. We're not going to cater radio to the local markets anymore, at least on the music side. On the, listen, sports radio, news talk, or not news talk, but news is still somewhat going to have to be local. But even then, like, we've been experimenting for years at different stations I've worked at where we've had people doing talk shows in Miami that have lived all over the country, connecting via some sort of connector unit. Back in the day it was ISDN, now it's Comrex, whatever. And they're doing a sports show because they were able to Google for a couple of hours some stories about local sports, and boom, they're doing a show in your market but living in another market. And how live and local is that? So it's just getting to the point where the deregulation has really hurt a radio company's need to have to be community-minded and community-based. Listen, they may donate to charities, and they may have a concert in your town, and they may have events in your town, and that's great, and that's wonderful, and that's part of it. But there's something about turning on the radio and hearing the DJ that lives in your town and knows about knows about the traffic on your streets and the issues that are going on in your town. There's something to be said about that we're just losing more and more day by day, and it hurts me a lot. It does. And people have said, well, if you don't like it, then get out of the business and blah, blah, blah. Well, one, I'm out of the business right now. On the other hand, listen, I'm not stupid. If my former employer, if another radio company, if anyone else wanted to call me and said, hey, the Beast, or they might use my real name, Brian. Hey, Brian, but I like the Beast. Call me the Beast. hey Beast, we got a job for you. We want you to be the program director of, 590, the sports pen. I don't even know what that is. Yeah, I would take the job, and I would do it to the best of my ability because I still love radio. I love doing radio. I don't want to be out of radio. I'm just shedding light on what is happening in radio. That doesn't mean I don't want to be a part of it, or that I don't believe in it, or that I don't want to work in it. It's just what is going to happen. And I think what you're going to have eventually is terrestrial radio will eventually die out. Like the AM signal is already getting to the point where no one's turning over there. And if you're on the AM signal, you better be on an FM repeater or move to FM because that's where it's going. But the thing with FM is, and a lot of people don't understand this, and I don't want to get too far down into the weeds, but basically FM signal, FM frequencies can be used to carry 5G, which is obviously the new cell phone standards that we're going by. And 5G and the cell companies are going to need more FM frequencies. And so how far away are we from the point where radio companies are selling off their frequencies to cell companies to make a buck there and going strictly digital? This is why radio has been pushing digital. Their apps, the iHeart app, the radio.com app, TuneIn, all of these apps are being pushed because eventually that's where it's all going to be, because the need to have an FM signal or terrestrial radio or transmitter is going to not be there, because you're going to have sold your frequencies to be used by the cell companies. That's just looking into the glass ball, into the future of things. And then at that point, it's every man for himself or woman for himself when we're all digital and there's no more. I can't tune to a certain station. So listen, what's happening is horrible, and I know people being affected by this, who are now going to go look for a job, and there's really not one to be had. I mean, listen, sure, you could go from being a full-time producer and making a decent salary to a part-time board op somewhere else and making $10 an hour, but that's not going to feed your family. It's certainly not going to pay the bills. It'll keep you in radio, but the chances for growth are slim to none, and Slim just ran out the door. So we find ourselves in a precarious situation in this industry. And, listen, if you're in it, if you're still in it, if you're selling, if you're on the air, if you're still in it, do your job and kick ass. And I pray that you are there as long as you can be, and that you make as much money as possible, and that you thrive and survive, and that's great. I just don't know. I'm not talking a year down the line. I'm talking 5-10 years down the line. What's going to be with terrestrial radio as we know it? I don't think the outlook is great as we talk about the long-term vision. All right, I know I was just rambling, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. To all of you out there who have just been dislocated, who have just lost your job recently, like, I feel for you in so many ways, because I just went through it too. And it's horrible. It steals your identity. It steals your purpose. It rips you away from your family, your work family. It does all sorts of things to your life, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, physically, that you can't even imagine. I have a series that I'm going to keep on going about what it's like to go through the unemployment process. And so I would urge you to go look for those videos on my channel. Maybe it'll help you. If you're newly unemployed, it might help you get through some dark days, and I hope you do that. So thanks for watching. Again, follow me on the social at Miami Radio Beast. Please subscribe to the channel right there. Just hit subscribe. You may not like, you know what, I can guarantee you're not going to love every video I make, because I do a lot of stuff all over the place. I may do a lot of Miami Hurricanes football stuff, radio stuff, unemployment stuff. I'm going to review movies. I've seen a bunch of movies I haven't even gotten to review yet. I may weigh into, whatever's going on nationally as far as the big stories go. Maybe, possibly at some point I'll address why yesterday when I woke up, hashtag nude MILF was trending in this country. That's something I might have to get to. So you never know what's going to come out of my mouth or what's going to pop onto your YouTube screen. But if you subscribe, you have a chance to watch it or not. And if you hit the bell, you get notified when I do make a new video. Subscribe on the social. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast. And again, if you love me, if you really love me, you will support me on Patreon, patreon.com/Brian the Beast London. That'll do it for everybody in my guest bedroom, which is just me. I'm the Beast. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.